Have you ever reached the end of the day and wondered where your time actually went? You were busy. You answered messages. You handled tasks. You probably spent hours doing things. And yet, it doesn't really feel like you were in control of the day. For a lot of people, that's become a normal feeling. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because something else is quietly directing their attention. And most people don't notice it happening. When people talk about taking control of their lives, the conversation usually focuses on motivation. Work harder. Stay disciplined. Want it more. But in everyday life, the problem often looks much simpler. You sit down to do one thing. 10 minutes later, you're doing something else. You open your phone to check one message. 20 minutes disappear. You plan your day in the morning. By afternoon, you're reacting to whatever appears in front of you. A notification, an email, a request from someone else, a headline, a recommendation, a new tab. And what usually happens next is interesting. You start feeling like life is happening to you rather than being directed by you. Not because you made one bad decision, but because your attention keeps getting redirected. Again and again. Control often feels like a motivation problem, but many times it's actually an attention problem. There are two ideas that help explain this. The first is that your environment shapes more of your behavior than you think. The second is that habits often run automatically once they're connected to attention cues. These ideas show up in several behavioral psychology books, including Atomic Habits and research on habit formation and attention. The key point is simple. Most daily behavior isn't the result of deliberate decisions. It's often a response to what's directly in front of us. And this is where things get interesting. People tend to imagine control as something happening inside the mind. But a surprising amount of behavior starts outside the mind. It starts in the environment. Imagine your phone is sitting beside you while you work. You might believe you're choosing when to look at it. Every vibration, notification, badge, and sound is acting like a tiny invitation. Not a command. An invitation. And invitations add up. Most people don't notice this part. They're evaluating their self-control while ignoring the number of decisions they're being asked to make. If you have to resist a distraction 50 times a day, that's very different from removing the distraction entirely. The person on the right isn't necessarily more disciplined. They're simply working in an environment that asks less from their attention. And attention is limited. Every time it gets redirected, there is a small cost. Not just in time, in mental momentum. Now let's talk about attention loops. An attention loop usually starts with something small. A notification, a moment of boredom, quick check, a thought like, I'll just look for a second. Then the brain receives new information, something interesting, something novel, something unfinished. One click becomes another. One video becomes another. One article becomes another. Not because you're making a conscious plan, but because the next step is always available. And the loop continues. This doesn't only happen on social media. It happens with email, news, online shopping, even productivity tools. Anything that constantly presents the next thing to look at. And over time, your attention starts moving according to external prompts rather than internal priorities. That's when people begin feeling disconnected from their own intentions. Now combine environment and attention loops. Something interesting happens. Behaviors become automatic. You stop deciding. You start repeating. Think about how many actions happen every day without conscious thought. Unlocking your phone. Opening a certain app. Checking inboxes. Refreshing feeds. Switching tabs. These aren't usually planned decisions. They're learned responses. The brain likes efficiency. If a behavior has been repeated enough times, it becomes easier to run the pattern than to question it. which sounds useful, and sometimes it is. Good habits work the same way. But unhealthy attention habits can also become automatic. That's why people often feel stuck even when they genuinely want to change. Their environment is triggering habits faster than their conscious intentions can respond. So what can you actually do about this? Not in theory. In real life. Here are a few practical adjustments. 1. Reduce friction for what matters. Most people try to increase willpower. A better starting point is reducing friction. Ask yourself, what is the first action I want to happen tomorrow morning? Then make that action easier. If you want to read, leave the book visible. If you want focus work, open the document beforehand. If you want less phone use, move the phone farther away. Small environmental changes often produce bigger results than dramatic plans. 2. Create attention boundaries. Instead of checking everything all day, create specific moments for it. Messages, email, news, social media. Give them a place. When everything can happen at any time, attention becomes fragmented. When activities have boundaries, attention becomes more stable. This doesn't require perfection, just a little structure. 3. Notice the trigger before the habit. Most habits have a starting point, a trigger. Boredom, stress, waiting in line, finishing a task. The next time you find yourself opening an app automatically, pause for a second and ask yourself, what happened right before this? The goal isn't judgment. It's awareness. Once you notice the trigger, the habit becomes easier to change. 4. Protect the first hour of the day. This isn't a strict rule, but many people find it useful. The first hour often sets the tone for attention. If the day begins with reactions to other people's priorities, it's easier to stay reactive. If the day begins with your own priorities, it's easier to maintain direction. Even 15 or 20 intentional minutes can make a difference. When people say they don't feel in control of their lives, they're often talking about something deeper than time management. They're talking about attention. Because attention is where daily life actually happens, moment by moment, choice by choice. Most of us don't lose control all at once. We lose it in small pieces. A distraction here, an automatic habit there, a day spent reacting instead of directing. The encouraging part is that control doesn't usually return through massive change. It often returns through small adjustments, a different environment, a better boundary, a habit made slightly easier, an attention loop interrupted before it begins. And over time, those small changes can create something that feels increasingly rare today. The feeling that your day belongs to you. Not perfectly, not every moment, but a little more than it did yesterday. Your attention shapes your experience. Protect it carefully. Your attention shapes your life. Subscribe for more. Watch the next video before you go.